It's my privilege to be guiding this round endeavour. My name is Peter. I'm going to be your host for the evening and the moderator for the panel discussion that will take place here at this table. It's my privilege to be guiding this round endeavour. I'd like to introduce you all to our esteemed panellists, and starting to my right, we have Mrs. Helena Norberg-Hodge, local author and filmmaker, 2012 first female recipient of the prestigious Tokyo-based Goi Peace Award. Helen is the producer of the award-winning documentary, The Economics of Happiness, and author of best-selling Ancient Futures, promoting a more sustainable and equitable world in the New Economy movement. Beside Helena is Dr. Paul Taylor, author and publisher of the Biochar Revolution. Paul is a physicist who has worked at Harvard, NASA and MIT. In the early 1970s, he worked at the National Centre for Atmospheric Research in the USA, alongside people who were doing early modelling on climate change. These days, Paul is looking into how we can sequester carbon and increase soil fertility using biochar, and actually has written a book, The Biochar Revolution. And if any of you are interested, just come and see me at the end of the evening and we can get you a copy of that. So, sitting beside Paul, we have Ms. Delta Kay, and I'd like to say a special thank you to Delta, who was able to attend us at a last minute's notice, and so she had some personal issues that she needed to attend to, so thank you very much for giving us your time. It's fantastic. Delta is a proud Arkell Bundjalung woman with over 20 years experience. I hope I got that pronunciation correct. I've been practicing. So. With over 20 years experience in the education sector, I should say. Her passion is teaching her Aboriginal culture with the wider community and especially children. Currently she's working with the Office of Environment and Heritage, National Parks and Wildlife Service, in Byron. Arkell work in joint management with the Office of Environment and Heritage to care for the community in her traditional homelands. Delta's people are sea people, and they are carers of the country. To my left, we have Ms. Jeanette Martin, coordinator and founder of the Mullumbimby Community Gardens. 2 years of hard work, visioning and developing an idea based on organic gardening, composting, water conservation, energy efficiency and recycling all came to life when Byron Shire Council allocated 5 acres of land to the concept. That's a great job. After 4 years, Jeanette is now fully engaged in a blossoming community garden in Mullumbimby, with one of the most significant outcomes being the involvement and the sharing with the community who participate in it. So, thank you. Beside Jeanette, we've got Dr. Marcello Sano. He's a research fellow at the lecturer at Griffith University and Southern Cross University, and the European Marie Curie Research Fellow in Marine Conservation. Marcello has a PhD in coastal management and a Master's in environmental science. His fields of interest and work include coastal and marine conservation, engineering, planning and management, climate change and adaptation, coastal and marine conservation. He specialises in systems thinking and modelling to better understand connections between human and natural processes. He's carried out research and consultancy projects in Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Egypt, Australia and the Pacific. Beside Marcello, we've got Mr. William Martin. William is the production manager of Bay FM, Byron Bay. He was directly responsible for initiating and producing a series of first ever live-to-air broadcasts for Bay FM, including the Community Forum. Over the last 2 decades, William has worked as a creative producer and project manager for a variety of organisations and media personalities. In the past decade, he has devoted his production expertise and marketing skills towards the preservation, of biodiversity for food production, backyard gardening and organic farming. William is the founder and director of Edible Garden Seed Company, which is a pioneer in the realm of organic heirloom seeds, seed saving and preservation, sustainable agricultural practices and socially responsible business. Beside William, we have Mr. Byron Bay, a representative of Mutual Responsibility. With a love for all things technological, creative and related to the human perspective, Ravian is a lecturer of graphic design, web development and photography. Ravian devoted much of his adult life for the betterment of humanity, such as Mutual Responsibility, which is the organisation behind Roundtable Live and Integral Education. Ravian believes that when diverse multicultural societies work in a complementary manner instead of a competition, they can better cope with emerging challenges, and that through unity we can reach similarity to nature. Great concept. Well, bless you. Well, for those of you who are new to Roundtable Live, the process is twofold. On one level, we discuss topics that revolve around current events and trends that affect us all. On the other level, we aim to create a platform of discussion that will allow participants to voice their opinion and hear the opinions of others freely. At the same time, we relate to all who sit around the tables tonight in a warm, equality-based environment that encourages connection. Our topic for this evening, a climate for change. It's a pretty hot topic, right? We can make it happen. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, conducted under the auspices of the United Nations, concluded that over the past 50 years, humans have changed the ecosystem more rapidly and extensively than in any comparable period of time in human history, largely to meet rapidly growing demands for food, fresh water, timber, fibre and fuel. The transformation of the planet has contributed to substantial net gains in human well-being and economic development, but not all regions and groups of people have benefited from this process, as I'm sure you'll all agree. In fact, many have been harmed. Moreover, the environment, the economic and social costs associated with these gains are only now becoming apparent to us. The General Assembly of the United Nations approved by consensus in 2012 a resolution that recognises that human beings are an inseparable part of nature and that they cannot damage it without severely damaging themselves. So a very poignant point when you think about it. Scientists, according to the latest reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, state that we must stop working against nature as we have been doing for centuries and begin to work in harmony with it. There's still some uncertainties, and there always will be, in understanding a complex system like the Earth's climate. Nevertheless, there is a strong and credible body of evidence based on multiple lines of research documenting that the climate is changing, and that these changes are in a large part caused by human activities. With a public that holds a record low opinion of government and the integrity of the scientific process being questioned, what are the implications for the climate debate? Recent studies have shown strong correlation between past climate changes and the human crises. Results show that any natural or social factor that causes large resource supply depletion, such as climate and environmental change, overpopulation, overconsumption, or non-equitable distribution of resources, may lead to a global crisis as the world is experiencing today. From this point on, how do we make change happen? It's a great question. How do we make change happen? How do we choose to relate to the environment, our planet? What do we need to do as humans, as a community, in order to restore balance and harmony with nature? We will learn from nature's amazing 4 billion years of experience in creating a healthy living systems to ensure a future for our children and ourselves. And my first question is to Helen. Congratulations, firstly, on the Goy Peace Award. It's an amazing achievement. The economics of happiness promotes a more sustainable and equitable world in the new economy movement. You've previously spoken about our lack of awareness of the negative impact of globalisation on the people and our climate. Why do you think a shift in our understanding and direction is so necessary now? How can we work more collaboratively while still moving toward a sustainable economy?
Thank you. Well, I think it is exactly a shift in awareness that's needed. Many people might think that sitting around here talking as we are tonight is just a waste of time. You know, many people feel enough talking, let's get on with the action. I believe that we have not been discussing these problems of overpopulation, overconsumption, global warming in the light of economic forces that have been driving up population as well as consumption, and that have been based on an unbelievable waste of energy and resources. And it has to do with the rise of giant global corporations and banks, a process that's been going on for a long time. And all that time, their power to shift people away from their relationship to the land, starting with indigenous people, starting with slavery, with genocide, this led to the creation of a global market that our governments now bow down to as though it were the living earth itself. We are behaving as though this global market is what's feeding us, clothing us, providing our jobs. Well, the fact is that it is the living earth, it's Mother Earth with her limited soil and water and all the life on this planet that actually nurture us. But we have allowed this nurturing to go via a very exploitative system where ever larger banks and corporations dominate. We need very urgently to have a clearer analysis of why things are going so quickly, so wrong. The good news is that if we can start looking at this bigger picture, we could create a very big and a very, very powerful alliance of groups that at the moment remain fragmented. Because whether you are more concerned about the whales or the dolphins or deforestation in the Amazon or gas fracking in the Byron Shire, or whether you're more concerned with the abuse of children and women, whether it's a trade in prostitutes, whether it's a trade in pedophilia networks, almost every social and environmental crisis you care to mention has either been created or exacerbated by a deregulated, free-for-all global market that is, at the moment, virtually impossible to regulate because we are not talking about it. So we are promoting what we call the economics of happiness, which has to do with re-regulating global trade and finance and deregulating local trade and finance. We don't realize that so much regulation that is destroying smaller businesses and even inhibiting wonderful projects like community gardens and farmers markets and local investment for local benefit. Most of that activity suffers from an over-regulation that is there to really deal with the abuse of the very large. But the very large are going off producing in China and Vietnam out of sight, out of control, while the local and national businesses bear the brunt of a bureaucracy that then leads to a growing, if you like, right-wing sentiment in the people. In America, its most dramatic form is in the form of the Tea Party, which is so frustrated by the overregulation that they see, and they blame the greenies and the lefties for this. They blame government. So they basically want to see government out of the picture and free market economics. We need to distinguish between free markets, plural, and the big global free market. The solutions lie with localizing, with rebuilding the fabric of local economies, especially around basic needs. Those solutions are already being created. They are demonstrating that you can literally, as you shorten distances between producers and consumers, between production and resources, you can start restoring biodiversity, restoring the healthy ecosystems, while you bring back healthier, more meaningful work to thriving communities. These initiatives are so remarkable because they're operating in a sea of subsidies, regulations, and a mindset, a media that pushes everything in the opposite direction. So, education as activism, let's all of us try to turn everybody onto the local as a global initiative, as an interlinked, collaborative effort with deeper communication between the global north and the global south. This is not about isolation. It's not about removing environmental regulations at the national or international level. We need to turn things around so that instead of a WTO, which is the global, World Trade Organization, which is promoting the world traders, to a WEO, a World Environment Organization, that would be protecting the soil and the resources for all of us while we decentralize and localize economic activity to a sensible balance. And I hope that you'll be interested and that you'll agree that we need to spread the word of localization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. It is truly inspirational to listen to you and to have watched your films and read your articles. It's great to have you with us here tonight. I'd like to now move on to Dr. Paul Taylor. And the question to you this evening is, the Climate Change Commissioner, Professor Tim Flannery, has described biochar as representing the single most important initiative for humanity's environmental and agricultural future. Big statement. From your research and development of biochar, what evidence have you found that shows humans as being out of balance with our environment? In a time when the integrity of the scientific process is being questioned by a climate change debate, what do you feel is the most important message to pass on to the public? And I'm sorry, but you only have 5 minutes to answer that question.
Okay. What we just heard is very, very important, and I want to give you the reason why we can't wait to start working on it. We need to get going. I'm trained as a physicist, so I came to biochar from my knowledge and concern about climate change. And climate change is unusual amongst environmental imbalances for several reasons. In fact, casting climate change as an environmental issue has probably actually inhibited understanding of the problem. It's fostered controversy, and its inhibitors come into good policy. Greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide accumulate in the atmosphere, and they trap heat, they trap sunlight around the planet. Carbon dioxide emitted anywhere travels everywhere, and it stays in the atmosphere for thousands of years. So we can't just decide one day to stop it and we'll get better. Even if we could get everyone to cut emissions now, the carbon dioxide that's accumulated in the atmosphere over centuries is still going to be there, and the climate's going to keep warming. So, and it's going to keep warming until the carbon dioxide drains away, and we figure out some way to get it down out of the atmosphere faster. So whatever the final amount of climate change that we choose to create is going to be irreversible for thousands of years. So that is why I became interested in biochar. Biochar is charcoal made from waste agricultural materials and forest waste that you can put into the soil to help the soil. Okay, and in the process it traps carbon dioxide in the soil because charcoal is long lasting. A biochar system applied in agriculture is a way of using waste material to remediate soils, to enhance food production, to make carbon negative energy, and at the same time mitigate climate change. Now here's the good news. So here's a simple and fair and responsible ethic that I want to put out. First, the nations that put the pollution in the sky, and it's just a few nations, mostly North America, Europe, and Australia, commit to bringing it back down again. Okay, in proportion to the amount they put up there. That's very fair because we did it and we got wealthy from it. Then, secondly, all nations agree to contract and converge their emissions to a common future per capita amount, close to zero. That's what we need to do, and that's fair because all humans have equal rights, and we can do that. It's achievable. It's technically achievable. We can harness that energy through food production, through biomass, through solar and wind power and hydropower and wave power and so on. It's all driven by sunshine. We know it can be done because nature figured out how to do this a long time ago and has been running a clean and 100% recycled economy for a long time. Time to stop victimizing indigenous people and said, listen to their pleas and wisdom. It's too late now to do this by ourselves. We need all the help we can get from the microorganisms, from the animals and the plants to begin to live within the budget of natural current sunshine.
Thank you so much, Paul. Delta, it's a well-known fact that Indigenous Australians have been living in balance with nature long before the rest of the world ever began to feel or understand the need to do so. Could you tell us a little bit about how important these values are and how they can be implemented in today's modern world? What are some of the more recent challenges that Indigenous people have experienced in relation to their dealings with the broader community?
And I thought tonight I'm just going to tell our story of how our people have lived here on the land, always in harmony, even with Europeans coming here and our people standing on the edges watching the destruction of our land, our plants, our animals. We are the Arakwal, Bumbalin, Bundjalung people of Cavanbar, the proper name for Byron Bay, a name that was taken from here and turned into Byron Bay from a poet. Our streets are named in the olden streets from poets, so our people didn't get asked to be part of Byron Bay. Our main campsite was here in Lawson Street at the roundabout. Sadly, as Byron Bay changed, many changes, the cedar getters, the sand mining, sadly our people had to adapt or die. So we adapted, living off the land, staying out of the main town, keeping the family safe. Nan and Pop did the best they could. Grandma died in her early 40s from snakebite. So grandfather had 13 children to raise. As you know, welfare in them days removed children. So our family were pushed to Aboriginal Reserve 20 kilometres south of Ballina, called Cavistry Island. My mother was one of the brothers and sisters that couldn't live in mission life, so she snuck back to town, and there she fell in love with a local white fella, and they just camped in their car for many years and raised their children, first living in the car and then in tents and caravans. Mum and my aunties and uncles kept us well connected to country. We knew where we belonged. We knew where our sacred sites were. We know the stories of why they're there, and we know our duty as Aboriginal people that we must care for it. These have been instilled in me since I was a little girl. Nan and Pop, 13 children died early. Nan and Pop only have one child alive now, and that's our Auntie Dulcie. He's very sick in hospital as we speak. So one Arakwal elder left. You're looking at a 44-year-old woman who is next in line with that heavy burden of caring for country. There's only a few of us who are knowledge keepers, and working closely with the local community is the only way that we can care for country. Our 4 last remaining elders embarked on an amazing journey when they saw Eddie Marbo win native title. My Auntie Eve said if he can do it, we can do it. So off they went. They didn't know how difficult it was going to be and how sick it made them telling their stories, their sacred stories over and over to government, to archaeological people. Constantly. For 14 years they told the same stories over and over, showed these people the same sacred sites over and over. And all their hard work, slowly the sisters passed away. But during their journey, we created Ilua 1, which gave us joint land management with national parks and the Byron Bay Shire Council. We have proper management of the Cape Byron Trust, whereas majority of the Cape Byron Trust is managed by Arakwal plus the community. Arakwal National Park was created in Ilua 1 in 2001. That again is a committee, majority is Arakwal with community. Then we have other parks and reserves in Byron Shire that come under the Byron Coast Area Committee. Again, the majority is Arakwal with community input. So as you can see, we have proper management over these areas that we call our country. And the creation of Arakwal National Park is very dear to us. Does anyone know that we won an international award for creating Arakwal National Park? In 2003, the International Union Conservation of Nature Award, Fred Packard Award. My sister and Auntie Lorna travelled over to South Africa and we won an international award that only, I think, 4 other Australians have won. That's amazing. That our caring for country. The elders also walked country with Tim Lowe and made a book all about their supermarket here at Arakwal National Park. So that's another wonderful resource that we got to make. And all you fellas in the community pushing, supporting us, making sure that country is cared for.
Tough.
Yeah, thank you.
Delta's really been able to strike to the core of what we're here tonight about, and that's about unity and coming together as a people. And I don't know about I do know, I can see that it's affected every single one of you. It certainly has affected me, and I thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. It's an honour to have you here with us. So moving on to Jeanette. Jeanette, my question for you tonight is, could you tell us about the Mullumbimby Community Gardens? What is the principal idea behind these gardens? How can these community projects strengthen the bonds between people, and what have you seen happen, positive or negative, when passionate, like-minded people work together?
Okay, well, you're going to have to give me a big nudge when it's time to stop because, I live and breathe community gardens. I don't actually have another life. It's because I love it. It's just amazing. You know, people come to community gardens for all sorts of different reasons. I first got involved with a community garden about 15 years ago down in Victoria because although I'd been growing veggies sort of a little bit on the side, I became really aware that I really wanted to feed my family good, real food. And I didn't know really how to do that. There's lots of books on how to grow food. There you can do courses on how to grow food. But what I realised is that the best learning comes from people who are doing it, from experience. And I can tell you every day I learn something new about how to grow food. And this is one of the key foundation values in a community garden. It's about sharing what you know, what you've experienced, and learning from each other. One of my greatest joys is watching people come together and work together to support each other in growing food. To get 2 or 4 or 6 or 12 people all working together and pulling weeds and chatting and comparing. It just makes my heart sing. And there's so many things that can go wrong. You've got pests, you've got diseases, you've got too much rain, you've got not enough rain, you've got too much sun, not enough sun, you've got, it's too cold, it's too windy. You can, plant your little seeds and nurture them and watch them grow, and then one day the grasshoppers have come and eaten the whole lot. It's all gone. And when you're on your own, that can be really, really disheartening. But in a community garden, you've got support. It sort of takes it, the pain shared it's lessened, it's less disheartening. There's somebody there to encourage you to have another go. It's also hard work, gardening and growing food. It's good exercise, but it can be very tiring. And so to come together in a group, you can achieve so much more. Like trying to weed a patch yourself can take quite a lot of time, an astounding amount of time actually. But you get a group of people together and they can just hammer it really quickly. It's a lot of fun. The stresses of our daily lives, there's so many people suffering from depression, from stress, from troubles with children, troubles with teenagers, relationship problems, lack of relationship problems, just so many things. But there's something so magical about getting your hands in the dirt. It's quite astounding. I've experienced it myself, but I see it in people who come to the garden. They can be just clouded in heaviness and weight. And a couple of hours after, getting your hands in the dirt, they're just standing tall. Incredibly valuable for people with mental health problems. It's transforming getting your hands in the soil. The earth just sort of sucks that all away. It's phenomenal. There's a lot of joys in coming together. There's a lot of challenges in coming together too. Although we all share a common thread in wanting to grow our food and wanting to learn, there's a lot of different ways to grow a carrot. Lots of different ways. There's people who like to dig the soil. There's people who don't like to dig the soil. There's people that like to mulch and those who don't like to mulch. There's people who have very strong ideas about how you do this. And this is the way, because I've been doing it for 20 years, but somebody else has been doing it differently. One of the amazing things that comes out of a community garden is you've got to actually kind of let go of what you think is the best way to do it, because somebody else is doing it a different way, and it all works. Some things work better than others, but, basically it all comes together. And so there's a lot of ego issues that come up, can I say just very politely. But it's a learning curve in how to get along with people. Somebody said the community garden is a template for world peace. If we can't get it right in a community garden, how are we going to get it right in the rest of the world? So it's interesting because, we might have a common belief and value in growing food, but there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different views, a lot of different ideas. So it's really an amazing experience getting all that together. Sorry? Time. Oh, okay. Somehow it works. With all these different people, we got old people and young people and families and unemployed people and people paying off fines and people in trouble with the courts and teenagers and so many different types of people come to the community garden. But the thing that I think they really get out of it is they can actually do something. It feels like we ran, I just have to do 2 more minutes. We ran an amazing program, a permaculture challenge, where we got 40 young people aged between 14 and 17, 20 from Byron and 20 from Mullumbimby, and we put them through, it was, I can't remember how many weeks now, about 6 weeks of permaculture challenge. And what those kids got out of it was this positive feeling that they could do something. They hear all the time that climate change is a problem, that, the world's in a bad way, and we gave them some practical solutions, and the feedback from the parents was it was life-changing for those kids. They can be small, they can be big. It's all about the people. It's about bringing the people together and sharing.
Some great points there, Jeanette, and it's amazing, isn't it, that how the little things bring us together, and little things such as getting involved in gardening, and probably more importantly, things such as eating together and sharing time and space together. So thank you so much. Marcello, your observation of the coast as a complex system having components and relationships is fascinating. And I also remember you describing a natural system as not being separated from us, but rather as integral to us.
So this, I'm a coastal expert, and what I've learned and what I've seen around the world is that basically we have 80% of the world population living in coastal areas all around the world. In Australia, probably 95. And these people are basically both the cause of climate change, because 80% or 90% of those emissions generating climate change are coming from coastal areas as well. And in coastal areas we are facing all the adaptation problems related with climate change, and what we do is basically carry out studies to understand better what's the implication of climate change on coastal areas. But the problem is very simple. Basically, we decided to settle in very fragile and dynamic environments. So most of the settlements, especially in Australia, white people started living in places which were quite unstable. That's why you have so many natural disasters. And basically, they were not wise enough. They didn't learn from the past. They didn't learn from the people who were already here before them. And today we're facing a lot of different issues, and I'm facing them from a technical perspective. Climate change is basically expanding our oceans, so we're going to have around 1 meter sea level rise in 2100. And that's not just like the crazy numbers coming out of scientists. We are already observing that sea level rise in the past. In the last 20 years, we had an average of 3 millimeters of sea level rise per year, and that is accelerating. And carbon emissions are not getting reduced at the moment, so probably potential scenarios are having like a meter sea level rise in the future, or even more if we think about 2200 or 2500. And back in Europe where I'm from, there's a lot of cities which are like 1000 years old. I started thinking around beaches as something that moves around, and beach migrate in the same way that bird migrate. So they move around and they go to a place to the other. And if we are able to protect those beaches as something that is actually worth protecting because it's a natural resource, a natural asset, we can't actually stop those beaches from migrating with, for example, something which might stop and fix that migration. For these problems, if we keep on facing this problem with the micromanagement perspective, we are always picking the least wrong. That's it. That was me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Marcello. Well, obviously, Byron Bay, it's a fairly precious area, and there's certainly no doubt about the fact that I think every single one of us here tonight will be very, very keen to do whatever we can to ensure that we protect the coastlines. As you say, Australians like to inhabit the coastlines. William, you've devoted much of your personal time to the preservation of biodiversity of seeds and food production, whilst maintaining a high-profile career in media and marketing. To what extent do you feel the media promotes the message that we are all responsible for the well-being of our planet, and that even the smallest action by an individual can have massive repercussions elsewhere?
I think the most important thing in having an answer is asking the right question. And it's something that the media avoids at all costs. And we've tended to oversimplify and let a few voices dominate the conversation. And it's created a real lack of inclusion, which is why I'm so thrilled to be here tonight and so thrilled to see everybody sort of come out. Because in that process of listening to media, I think that we get into a sense of learned helplessness. And most of the people that I talk to are waiting for some out there. They're waiting for some answer to come. They're waiting for a government. They're waiting for a corporation. They're waiting for some technological innovation that's going to come and change the situation here. And, the answers are all around us. The answers are in the community. And the real breakthrough that I see is sort of happening is not a technological breakthrough. It's a breakthrough within the human heart. And to this end, a meeting like this tonight is immensely more valuable than anything that you're gonna get from the local media. A great conversation opens the doorway to the best part of you in your life. A great conversation introduces you to a personal calling of more generosity, more caring, more courage, more dedication to the things that matter. That's what we're doing here tonight. And instead of waiting for the media to change, I want to encourage everyone here to be courageous, and start having these conversations in your daily life everywhere. Start bringing them into your circles, bring them into your companies, bring them into your environment. Coming from the States, I can tell you we don't have community media. We don't have community radio. It's all bought out. So we are all incredibly lucky. We're so fortunate to be here in Australia and to be the lucky recipients of a place like Bay FM. It's a simple little station, but a lot of stuff is happening up there. And so I can only say from this place is that we need to start to be our own media. Get involved. Come in and participate in whatever way it is, the web, through BFM, making videos, things like this, webcasting. And so the simple act of getting involved in these conversations and bringing these questions to light always will bring us back to ourselves. And where it will bring us back to our own sense of personal responsibility in terms of the issues that we're facing. And it's a homecoming. It's something that's always been there. And it's been lost in the trivial conversations that the media is completely trying to preoccupy us with. It's the meaning that we ascribe to the things that we're witnessing that will ultimately determine the actions that we start to take on a daily basis. And so we've relinquished this to the politicians, to the newscasters, to the celebrities. And when Peter came into BFM the other day, and I told him how thrilled I was. I come from some pretty heavy-duty media personalities and celebrities, and I was so thrilled to be looking on the Mutual Responsibility website and not to see a single name, not to see a single person that's sort of dominating the conversation and sort of steering it in a particular direction based on their own agenda, and I think it's something that's very special that's sort of taking seed here. I want to just offer that the etymology of the word media comes from Latin, and the origins of the word is medial or medium, which means a channel of communication, and it originally related to the person who conveys a spiritual message, a medium. I mean, we're all familiar with that. It's at one time the medium was considered to be an evolved spiritual or saintly being, and somebody who could bring the communications from another realm down into this world. And I see your culture has created, initiations that people are entrusted to do this. The Tibetan that have their oracles, the shamans of the traditional Native Americans. We've surrendered this to those with the deepest pockets, with those with the most resources, those with the biggest agenda. They end up being the ones with the biggest megaphone. And the consequences of this are staring us in the face. I mean, I think of Rupert Murdoch instantly when I think about people who are really driving the conversation of our times. And together, what tonight is about is taking our rightful place in the conversation as we discuss the issues facing humanity. And everybody has a voice in this. Everybody has a stake. And the beauty that I found in being a BFM, and as I start to engage in these kinds of conversations, is that you begin to overhear yourself saying things that you never knew that you knew, that you were never aware of. And you start to realize that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. We're it. It's right here. And when I got involved in organic farming, I started my seed business. I had spent a year in India after my father passed away, and I worked for Anita Roddick, and she graciously set me up with some time with Dr. Vandana Shiva and Satish Kumar and Gandhi's granddaughter. And in this time there, I witnessed the families of the farmer suicides, displaced families that were pushed off the land through big agriculture. You witness these enormous monocultures, pesticides, Monsanto, and loss of diversity. And in the midst of all this overwhelming information, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Nobody even needed to tell me. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And we all know it. We all know this stuff. We know to plant seeds. We know to grow gardens. We already know to shop and support our local farmers market. We know not to be eating crappy food that's shipped from faraway lands. We know this stuff. And it's about taking steps in our lives. And so my conversation this evening, and my contribution here is, it's less about what the media is doing, and it's more about you. So as we watch the stories of families swimming in rivers of runaway floods and nations at war with other nations because of water scarcity and traditional farmers losing their lands because of salination, we are missing the real story of how our actions have had an impact on each of these events. So tonight is an invitation. Thanks. Tonight's an invitation to engage in the deeper conversations that are shaping our lives. And I really acknowledge you all for coming out and showing up tonight, because it takes courage. The truth of the larger conversation can be just too painful. If you look at the word courage, it comes from the French word coeur, which means heart. So courage, at its essence, is the measure of your heartfelt participation in the world. And this is an invitation to inhabit the larger conversations of what we want for ourselves and what we want for the world that we're leaving our children. I'm here to tell you tonight, the revolution will not be televised. The real revolution is happening right here in this room. The revolution is happening inside the person that takes all of this and makes a bold decision to forge your own path, see what needs to be done, and start doing it, irrespective of what the media says. What they never told you on TV is that the history of the world is shaped by the actions of a single human being. And that human being is you.
I don't think any one of us here tonight couldn't see the heartfelt message, and more than see it, feel it to the very core. And that's what we're all here for, is to reach out and to come together in these single unifying expressions. And William, thank you so much. That was brilliant. Thank you. Ravin, no pressure. That's a hard act to follow. So my question for you tonight, Ravin, is that you actually represent mutual responsibility, and you're involved in developing innovative education programs, such as this one here this evening.
Mutual responsibility is basically looking at the bigger picture, is stepping back and seeing that if we want to resolve any of the issues that we face, we need to really come back down to the core of everything. And mutual responsibility looks at that core as being the connection between us, how we relate together, how we get on together. And the words from William here, it nails it. We all felt that. Like, my heart's pounding. It's phenomenal, this connection that William has given us. But also the connection that I felt from Delta. It was such an amazing story. I felt that pain. And the amazing stories and the amazing information. It's such a diverse group of people. And they're all talking about the same thing. They're all talking about different topics. But effectively, they're all talking about connection. You hear these words, connection and community, and working together, come up time and time again. And it doesn't really matter what problem we're talking about. If we're talking about climate change, if we're talking about economic crises, if we're talking about interpersonal crises, it all boils down to how we relate together, how we work together. And that's really why we're here tonight. We're here to establish a connection. We're here to connect together over a topic and see what comes out effectively. If you look at research like from Marcello, you see that nature is a complex and interconnected system, and everything affects everything else. We start to see that everything in the space that we inhabit is interconnected. All of us interconnected, and we with our environment interconnected. And if you look at the topics that we're talking about cooperation, we're talking about collaboration. And if you boil down the term collaboration, it means working together to achieve a goal. And you have to realize that in an interconnected system like nature, we as human beings are in a collaborative relationship with nature and with each other, whether we like it or not. Everything affects everything else. There was a World Monetary Fund research report that was released recently in the last couple of years, and it looked at all sorts of different crises. It looked at economic crises, it looked at ecological crises and human crises. And it realized, when it started to study all these patterns, it realized that where one crisis emerged, another crisis in a completely, effectively unrelated sector would also crop up. So we see that ecological crises actually can cause or can be some sort of catalyst in an economic crisis. So we see this interrelation. So we have to, first of all, realize that we are in a collaborative relationship with everything else. And the fundamental question that mutual responsibility asks is, are we working together in the best possible way? Are we working together with nature in the best possible way, or are we working together with each other in the best possible way? That's the fundamental question at the end of the day that mutual responsibility asks. And if you look at the environment, if you look at the ecological disasters, if you look at deforestation rates and extinction rates and all the problems, pollution that we see today, I think you have to ask yourself, are we as humans working in the best possible way with the environment? It's a very big question. Now, whether humans are directly creating climate change is still a very big debate, but it's pretty obvious that humans have a significantly larger impact upon nature than everything else. So you'd have to ask yourself, are we working with nature in the best possible way? If you look at human interpersonal connection, if we look at society, we see global depression rates rising, being almost the number one global disease. We see family breakdowns. We see the economic crisis. We see all these massive problems. So once again, you have to ask yourself, are we working together in the best possible way? Me personally, I think we could definitely be working together in a better way. So that leads to the question is, well, why are we not working together in the best possible way? And how can we work together in the best possible way? I think if you really look at how we work together and you really study yourself, and this is one of the points that William really nailed as well, is you have to have the courage to look at yourself and really study yourself and pay attention to your thoughts and your feelings. If you really scrutinise yourself, we work together in a competitive nature. And we've built up a global system based on competition. If you've seen Helena's movie, The Economic of Happiness, you see that we've built up massive, intensely competitive environments on economic levels that are so large that they affect the daily lives of all of us. If you look at it just on a personal level, and in an environment like this round table, just pay attention to your thoughts. Are you here just waiting for your turn to speak? Or are you here to truly listen to what the other person has to say? And this is this discomfort that William really talks about. We are driven by our natural instinct to survive. That's us as an animal. We want to survive. We want to better ourselves. That is our ego. And, we can pull, the elephant out of the room, whatever the saying is. Yeah, it is our ego. And the ego is not a negative thing. It's given us all that we have today. All this technology, all this wonderful stuff is created by our drive to create, our drive to create more and better things. And it's stimulated by competition. Competition is also a good thing because we compete against each other and we better each other. But this intense competition is something that leads us down a very dangerous path. And we see that right now. We see that in big business. Having this massive, intense competition drives big business to protect their investments, even if it's going to destroy the environment or even if it's going to damage a small community. Yeah, they need to protect their investments. This intense competition also drives very innovative and sustainable technologies like biochar. It makes it very hard for these technologies to reach a mainstream level and to really be picked up and spread across the world and implemented, because at some point there is some business who feels threatened by that technology and wants to protect its investment. And we see that time and time again, that technologies that could potentially cause massive changes in the world on an environmental level or on a social level are stifled by big business because they feel threatened by it. It threatens their market, their industry model. So we've got to try and get to the root of that problem and overcome that competitiveness. And this is not going to happen by big business. This is not going to happen by political leaders. This is not going to happen by the super rich. They have too much invested in this to start breaking down this competitive barrier. It's also not going to happen by the very poor. The very poor are too busy trying to survive. It's going to happen by us. It's going to happen by people who have a choice. We have sustained our basic survival needs, and we have the ability to come to events like this to make change. And that change will happen, as William said, on this space, in these sort of platforms, or in platforms like the community gardens. I mean, you hear the joy that came from Jeanette just blew my heart away. It's amazing. And that's that joy of coming together and connecting. But there is discomfort. And that discomfort is our inherent competitive nature. So if we want to overcome this and try to get out of this competitive nature, it's through a process of education, or probably more importantly on our level, on an adult level, re-education. We've been taught from day one to be competitive, whether it be in sports or whether it be for jobs or material possessions. So we need to teach ourselves, re-educate ourselves how to think in a collaborative way, truly on a collaborative way, by scrutinising yourself. That's education. And if we can bring these sorts of projects, these sorts of education programs into schooling, for example, instead of teaching just base level knowledge, which now most students can acquire off the internet much faster than most teachers can teach them, if we actually teach collaborative thinking, how to empathise with each other, how to teach these basic skills at school, we're going to start students off on the right path from day one. And that's what mutual responsibility is all about. How can we get this type of education into the education system, and more roundtable discussions, more projects where we can practice our collaborative mind and heart, and how we can try and overcome this inherent competitive behaviour. And I think we have a lot to learn from Delta and the words that she gave us, and the thinking and the feeling of the Indigenous people. I felt that pain, and that suffering should not be wrought on anyone. And I think if we continue down this path of competition, where the white men pushed the Indigenous tribes off the land out of competition because they needed it, yeah. If we can get rid of that, then we won't have to go through the suffering. So I'd just like to say our thoughts are with your auntie, and I hope she gets on soon. So thank you. And this roundtable, focus on that. See if we can really kind of collaborate and work together. So enjoy.
Well, I'd just like to thank the panellists for what's been an absolutely inspiring night so far.